Hey, family, Reverend Russ, super excited that you decided to join me back here again for Ministry Pivot. So thankful if you are watching or listening, if you're driving or if you are working out or you're actually just watching and sitting here looking at this next episode. Super excited that you decided to join us. And please don't forget to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe, to share this with someone so that they can comment and share and subscribe so that you can get the information that we've been given here. And just super excited about all that God is doing Ministry Pivot, about the articles. Big shout out to my ministry partner, Givelify. Super excited about that partnership. And today I'm excited because I have my friend and brother, beloved Reverend Dr. Bobby Manning, who is the senior pastor of the Heights here in the DMV area. And super excited to have a talk with him. Pastor Bobby is going to talk with us about what it means to lead through transitional ministry. He took over a church. He was appointed to a church that's older than he is, but he was able to glean some of the things that were working really well when he got there, add some of his own flavor. So he talks about transition, not just in that building, but they were also able to go offsite and do ministry in a high school. And so some of us who are dealing with that and looking at that, he talks through some of the rise and fall of those things. He also talks about what it means to lead in a pandemic. He talks about a building project in a pandemic. And so that's super excited to talk about, and how God kind of encouraged them and moved them in their faith. And he talks about generational ministry. He actually has a book out that's coming out in the next couple of days around that. And so I encourage you to check out Dr. Bobby Manning and his new book about how to engage with generations in your church in leadership. And then he also just shares a couple other nuggets, and we ask questions and we kind of walk through it. He shares some resources as well. So super excited to have him on. I'm not going to talk anymore. I really want to get to the conversation that I had with Pastor Bobby Manning. Let's go. Pastor Bobby, thanks for joining me on Ministry Pivot today, man. Super excited to have you in the house virtually. Super excited to have you with us, man. I shared a little bit in the intro about kind of who you are and what you've done, and we're friends, but I want you to share just a little bit with those who are watching, those who are listening, a little bit about Reverend Dr. Bobby Manning.
Man, Russ, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm so excited. I love Ministry Pivot. I love what you do. I love this ministry, man. Grateful to be a part of it today. Dr. Bobby Manning, I pastor the Heights Church. We just celebrated 11 years of pastoral leadership at the Heights. It's been 11 years of transition. We could say we've been pivoting for 11 years at the Heights. The original name of the church is First Baptist Church of District Heights. We just are kind of in the middle of a rebrand, really not really in the middle, of kind of putting a stamp now on the rebrand, calling it the Heights as a nickname, and really looking to who we are called to and how we can be even more effective, even in something as simple as the brand of the church, and how we reach people of a new generation. I also, while I pastor, I'm also a ministry coach, a church consultant. I coach pastors. I have a coaching network that I utilize for new and emerging pastors that I coach, and that's a lot of fun. One of my favorite things to do, and I write books. Thanks to your encouragement, I'm actually right now working on my fourth book called Gentegration, leading, helping your leaders across generations. And so it's an exciting project that we hope will release this summer. And so a lot on my plate right now, but I appreciate spending time with you.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I hope y'all heard. He said a lot. So we're going to walk through some of it. Pastor Bobby is a friend of mine, like he alluded to. We've known each other now for over a decade, and I am just super proud and excited about all that God is doing in his life of the ministry. But he said several things. The first thing, but I want to take him back. So he's 11 years in as a pastor of the First Baptist Church of District Heights, that's now called the Heights. That's
Church.
He glanced through it, but I need us to talk through it, because before COVID, he was doing some pivots, and that's really what I want to kind of glean in. So, Pastor Bobby, if you can go back, not to the first day, right, because we can't do all 11 years, but if you can go back to what it was like and some of the transitions, some of the pivot moments that you experienced, because you started out in youth ministry, young adult ministry, I believe, and then you transitioned into pastoring. And I know we've had some conversations, but I want you to talk with the pastor who may have just started into ministry. Maybe they're in ministry and they're not quite hitting the 10-year mark yet, or they're not at the 11-year mark yet, because there's some pivots, some transitions. I know we've had conversations, and I don't want to lead the question too much, but we've had talks about just the demographic and generational differences that you experienced when you got there. So if you can talk just a little bit about that, and then we'll transition into the name, because the name piece is major for me, bro. So we'll talk about that too.
Sure. So I got called to First Baptist Church of District Heights when I was 28 years old. I had a church planting passion, Russ. I thought I was going to plant a church in DC. And then the Lord called me to District Heights. 50 people participated in the vote to receive me as pastor. Legend has it that I won 40-10. And then when I got there was 40 people. Now you do the math.
That's the part I wanted him to say on camera. That's the part. He told me that over lunch or something, and it blew my mind.
And so yeah, we started with about 40 people active. Surely, Baptist church, all church, there's more on the roll, and some of us pastors, we give the roll number, but the roll number isn't actually the actual number. So when I was there, when I got there, most of the people there were probably old enough to be my parents or grandparents. Wow. I made the joke on my first day that I'm the youngest adult member of the church. It wasn't true. There were one or two people who were slightly younger than me, but that's what I walked into. But man, I walked into a church that wanted to grow by and large, and that wanted to reach the younger demographics, and not all churches want that. And I'm passionate because of my experience. I'm passionate about church transitioning. And I'm passionate about intergenerational connectivity because of this experience. And I've written on it, I've consulted on it, I've taught on it, because it's so important. But when it comes down to church transitioning, not all churches want to be transitioned. And it's so important for a pastoral candidate to know going in, because people will say the right stuff while they're interviewing you, especially if they want you. But it's so important to discern whether or not, if you have a heart to transition a church, it's so important to determine and discern whether or not they actually want to be transitioned, or if they want you to come in and keep and do magic with what they want to continue doing. And so I celebrate some of the strong leaders at the Heights. When I got there, they really wanted to see their church grow. They really wanted to see their church grow younger. And so we partnered in that over the first several years, and the Lord has grown our church, younger, and we are truly a multi-generational church, which is we really couldn't have said that accurately before, but now we're able to say that, and I celebrate. I praise God.
That is awesome, man. I'm super excited to hear that, and that the 10 people piece, because I do the math, and that's just phenomenal. But I think there are several things that pastors need to kind of keep encouraged. And again, shout out to my senior pastor, Pastor Watley here at super excited for the opportunity he gives me, but also just for his leadership and doing these has helped me understand more and more the plight of pastors that you all have in this season. And I can only imagine what it was like to kind of walk into that, see those people leave, to walk in to all that you had to deal with. I did a pivot recently. You all can see it in the show notes. I'll link it with Pastor Yvette Blair and Pastor Heber Brown on Sabbath and what that means, and being able to take that as a pastor. But I want to hone in to a piece that you talked about. I don't want to glare over it. You did several pivots when you got there, right? Before we get to the name, I want to talk about before COVID. And again, we pray for those who are impacted the season of COVID. We've been impacted as well. But before COVID, you were doing several things. You were doing some community outreach things that you've enhanced. But even outside of that, you all went to a high school to do some stuff.
Mhm.
So I want you to talk to, because you had this building. I've been there. I've been honored to be at the church, to be honored to be there, to share and lead and talk with people there. But I know your church, the setup is inside a community. Your church, I'm not sure how old the building is, but it's not a brand new building. And so you've made some pivots inside of the building before COVID, and you went to
Sure.
a high school to even make some further pivots. So I kind of want to talk a little bit through that for the leaders who are thinking about their space and
Yeah.
thinking about ways that they can reimagine their space. And even during COVID, you made some renovations that I
Yes.
think is key to highlight. Now that was a whole lot that I kind of
Yeah.
highlighted about it. So one of those you want to touch on, I'm cool with.
Sure. So yeah, you did run through a lot of things. Let me see if I can track it in order. So one thing that I would say that's important as we talk about pivot is to make sure that you're not too jerky with your pivots with the people that you lead. And that's a lesson that I learned the hard way. It's important to pivot, but it's also important to pivot wisely and pivot well. And so I can't say that I've always done that the right way in my leadership here at the Heights. And so some of my pivots were well done, and some of my pivots were pretty strong. It's like driving in a car, Russ. If I'm behind the wheel and I realize I need to make a turn, it's a turn I need to make.
Yeah.
But if I hit that turn too hot and the people that are in the car aren't ready for it, they're
Mhm.
gonna, I mean, they're gonna be all over the place. It's gonna make
Yeah.
them uncomfortable. They might bust their head on the window beside them. And so even as we pivot, we got to make sure that we put our, it's just like making a turn. You slow down, you put your turn signal on, you make sure everybody in the car and everybody around the car is aware that you're about to make the turn, and you make the turn successfully.
That's
Um,
good.
Pre-pandemic, around 2018, the Lord showed me a space. We were outgrowing our church building. Our church building is it was built in the 70s. Our church was growing. We were already at two, looking to make a shift to three services because we were packing out two services. And the Lord led me to take our worship experience to a local high school. Central High School is about 2 miles from our church. um, uh, and it gave us a larger space to grow. It gave us a different feel, a different look in
Yeah.
regards to how we worship and what Sunday worship looked like. I was very excited about it, but you and I both know I was the only one as excited as me about that shift. Because again, remember, I had a church of older traditional folks,
Yeah.
and they couldn't wrap their mind, even with the services being packed out, even with them having to get to church early in order to get their seat, even with them shoulder to shoulder every Sunday, no matter what service they came to. it,
Yeah.
it, it was difficult for a lot of folks to comprehend and grasp church and school.
Yeah.
It felt like startup. It felt like unestablished when we
Yeah.
were a almost 70-year-old church, a 65-year-old church at the time. And so, of course, a lot of people didn't like it. And at the same time, I began the rebrand. And so, if just looking back on it, I realized, okay, it might have been a little bit too much at the same time for a lot of my folks. It's not that I shouldn't have made the turn, but I did make the turn a little too jerky.
Yeah.
If I could just reflect on it then. And so what I learned is necessary turns must still be made cautiously.
That's good.
And we got to be mindful of making sure that you don't turn so hard that you lose people that need to stay. Now, some people left that needed to leave. And that was the reason for them to leave when they were already thinking about leaving, and that's okay. But you don't want to lose the people that are central to your mission and central to what the Lord is doing in your church, or even alienate them. Some people will stay and feel alienated, and not give the wind that's necessary to the vision that God's given you. And so that was kind of taking place before COVID. Our time ended at the school because pre-COVID, the school started doing renovations, and so they were doing a major renovation that they took the kids out to school. So certainly this church that was showing up on Sundays couldn't continue to worship there, and
Wow.
that was just before COVID hit.
Wow.
And so really the Lord, I believe,
That was a blessing.
obviously the
Yeah.
Lord knew what was coming down the pipe. And positioned us to be able to pivot well. It's almost like the Lord said, Bobby, you're going to make this pivot too fast. And so let me help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And put you in a place prior to what is coming down the pipe. And so so that's kind of some of the major stuff that was taking place in the pre-COVID time.
Let me ask you a question real quick before you continue. Let me ask you. So in that, because I don't want to run through things too quickly. I know we're trying to cram it in. I know people are driving, they're working out, they're listening, they're watching. So please don't forget to subscribe, and please don't forget to follow. But also the show notes in the bottom will list some of these key points. But one of the things I want you to the pivot of shifting from a church that you all own into a high school that you all had to rent. There were conversations that you had to have.
Absolutely.
There were people who I'm sure said, one, why are we paying for something when we own this or mortgage on this? Two, I'm sure the people are saying, now we got to have people who have to come and set up, and we ain't got to set up at our own church, Pastor. So help me understand, help those who are listening, watching, understand, how did you and the team navigate those conversations? Because those for me as the operations guy pop right up. And I'm sure that there are pastors and leaders who are thinking the same thing. Well, how did they, or glanced over it? But if you could just pinpoint that for a second, and then we'll transition into some of the COVID pieces.
Sure. So a couple of things. Number one, you got to have a lot of conversations, and you got to have a lot of conversations. And this is the important thing. You got to have a lot of conversations before the final decision is made.
That's good.
If you bring somebody a completed idea, then they'll either have to stamp it or dismiss it. But if you bring them something, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm praying about. This is the vision. And then you set the vision before them. Before you tell them the what, you got to tell them the why. Because if they buy the why, then they'll work with you on the what.
Yeah.
And so for us, the why had always been connecting with communities, getting outside the four walls of this church, making sure that we are reaching beyond just the people who are here. We've always had an outreach mindset from day one of my pastorate. And I know you asked that earlier, and we didn't really get to it, but we've always had an outreach mindset. It's always making sure that what we do here is for the people who are not yet here.
Right.
And so the conversations were, hey, let's begin with the why. The why is we want to reach beyond District Heights. The why is we want to reach a brand new community that may or may not have been exposed to us. The why is what God has called us to is bigger than District Heights. And then we talk about the what. And of course, the why is we want to continue to reach more people. And right now, there's no room for any new person to come to our church. At the time, that was what was going on. And so if they buy the why, then we can begin talking about, okay, well, what's the what that helps us to get to the why? And so we, in my opinion, we could not overlook the opportunity. It was a wide open door. And so in my preaching, I talked about open doors to ministry. I milked Paul for for all it was worth. That passage just said we found a wide open door. Yeah. I started giving people a little door knocker pins, like, hey, hey, this is where we're going, and I want you to wear this pin of a door knocker to remind ourselves that God has opened wide this door. And so it just begins with conversations. Yeah. Before we had, in my mind, I had decided, but I hadn't told the church that I had decided. Yeah. So before I told the church I had decided, I said, you know what, let's do a couple of Sundays, a couple of special Sundays where we worship over here at this high school. Yeah. And we can get a good feel for what it looked like and what it was, and what setup and tear down would look like, and what the stage would look like, and what the entrance would look like, and what parking would look like. and those 2 Sundays, we did one in September and one in November, I think. And those 2 Sundays, Russ, were amazing. I mean, it was ridiculous. And
Yeah.
so at that time, it was hard. It was almost an easy sell, except for the people who just didn't care,
Yeah.
didn't want it, didn't like the idea, didn't care that worship was amazing and people were coming to Jesus, and we were reaching the people that we were looking and hoping to reach.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the process. During that process, I got to be honest though. During that process, I thought that the Lord was going to use that season to grow our church to the next, to the next level, through the next growth barrier.
Yeah.
Our church grew by a third and shrunk by a third during that time.
Wow. Wow.
it,
Wow.
it grew by a third of the people that we were hoping to reach. It
Yeah.
shrunk by a third for the people that just wasn't feeling it
Yeah.
and needed that reason to move on. And so it seems like it's a wash. It's not a wash, because the people who came were the people that needed to come for what the Lord was going to do in the next season. And I think that's important to realize for pastors and leaders, is that when you lose people, when the Lord transitions people out of your church, don't take it personally. It's not about you.
Hmm.
The Lord brings the people that you need, and he
Yeah.
removes the people that would hold back the vision that he's given you
Yeah.
for where he's taking you.
That's good. That's great. That's great. I think all of those are awesome points. One of the things that I'm gonna highlight that you said, and I think you opened up the conversation for the change in the name in a moment, but I want to make sure people heard you said doing now for the people who are not here yet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that is super important, I think, for several different reasons in several different contexts. But even for those who are watching or listening, maybe you're not a church leader or you're a church pastor, but maybe you are a business owner, entrepreneur. You're doing something now, but the question is, are you doing what's now for the people that you want to come? I think
Mm-hmm.
that is super important. We've talked a couple of times on Ministry Pivot, really 5-minute pivot, about the power of moments and thinking through what those things look like. This is one of the moments that Pastor Bobby has pulled out. And so I wanted to highlight that and make sure that we take note of that. But Pastor Bobby.
Absolutely. And I'll say, just think about leadership like as if you're a fisherman. That an effective fisherman, if you're going to be effective, you got to be able to catch the fish, and you got to be able to clean and prepare the fish.
That's good.
And you can't do one at the cost of the other. You
Yeah.
can't clean and prepare fish at the cost of catching new fish. But
Yeah.
you also can't catch new fish at the cost of cleaning and preparing the fish that you've already caught. Because if all you're about is catching fish, then the fish that you've caught will spoil. But if all you're about is cleaning fish, then you won't catch any new fish, and you'll be out of business. And so you gotta be able to do both. You got to be effective at doing both. Go ahead.
That's great. That's great. So now enters in the conversation on the shift in the name. So you are a 30 something, almost 40 something leader, and you at a church that was around before you were born, and you
Mm-hmm.
changed the name of the church. That's how everybody saw it. So that's how I set it up. Explain to me how you all made that pivot. I understand if we were listening a minute ago, because it's larger than what the church was named for. And so that's my assumption, but I want to hear you articulate it, please.
So I started planting seeds for a name change when I first got there, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
When I got there, I started calling the church as a nickname, The Heights. And that would be 8 years before I even teased a name change.
Hmm.
I would train my staff to say good morning, welcome to the Heights, as people walked in. And so it's not as if I had a dream one day, I woke up the next day and I said, hey y'all, the name of this church has changed. They would have probably crucified me on the cross above the pulpit if I
Yeah.
if I had
Yeah.
done something like
I
that.
agree.
But and so really it was a real slow roll. It was
Mhm.
hey, welcome to the Heights. It was I'll see you at the Heights. It was kind of, and if anybody asks me about it, I'm like, it's just a nickname.
Yeah.
Is if your name is William and they call you Bill, it's because you got a nickname. And so I would downplay it. I would use it for my name is Robert, but
Yeah.
y'all call me Bobby. It's a nickname, my legal name, and then what my friends call me, right?
Mhm.
And so that's how I would play it for 8 years
Okay.
as the pastor. And then over time it became, it's time for a new logo. How can we do the new logo? And so we started with this H that's on my chest right here. We started with that in the original FBCD Heights
Yeah.
logo.
Yeah.
And then years later, it just became the Heights FBCDH. And then recently, it's just updating the logo to say the Heights Church. And honestly, I did not feel like I had released to do it fully
Yeah.
until I was the pastor for 10 years.
That's good. That's good.
And some folks say, you're not the pastor until you pastor for 5 years. I doubled it. I was like,
That's good. That's good.
and by that time, the church had changed so dramatically.
Yeah.
By that time, the vast majority of the people that were part of our church had come since I had been there. By that time, the vast majority of people called the church the Heights just by practice by then.
Good.
And by then, the people who were there, I call them my legacy members who were there before I got there, which are
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Man, we really should talk about that. Because for some, the model is, okay, let's just blow up everything on day one, and legacy members be darned. And that could be a way to grow a church fast, but it just wasn't my method. It wasn't
Yeah.
my method.
Yeah.
No shade to anybody, but it just wasn't my method. But by that time, let me get back to what I was saying. By that time, my legacy members were on my side.
That's good.
And I should say on my side, they always supported me, but
Yeah.
they trusted my leadership because I had enough wins under my belt. I had enough wins under my belt, and I had spent 11 years, 10 years, almost 11 years loving them
That's good.
and loving their church and being faithful to my assignment. And by that time, they knew that even if I make a change that they're uncomfortable with, they know that I'm not making that change and dismissing them or disrespecting them or disrespecting the history, because I spent 10 years honoring the history and
Yeah.
honoring them and loving them. And then, of course, by that time as well, even my legacy members knew the why.
Yeah. Yeah.
The why is, while the name First Baptist Church of District Heights says something positive to a baby boomer, it says established, it says stable to a baby boomer, it says old, traditional, stiff to a millennial or to a Gen Zer. And so again, I've spent 10 years and now 11 years saying, okay, guys, who is our target? Do we want to be reaching for baby boomers who probably aren't changing churches by and large? Or do we want to be reaching for millennials and Gen Z closer to the age of the pastor? And so by that time, they're in on the why. Even if they're uncomfortable with the what, they understand it.
No, I think that's great, and you said several pieces in that. So I think and the legacy piece is definitely a piece that people need to be mindful of and know. I wrote a book a long time ago at New Stops, and I wrote in it that if you come in and change everything, you're not really a leader, because that's not a thing that you do. But one of the things that I want to point out. And I want to ask you about as we transition, because we've all had to deal with COVID. Unfortunately, we pray for those who lost loved ones. We pray for those who've been impacted. All of us have been impacted. But as you all went into COVID, you went in with this thinking of the Heights, right? You all made several pivots, but there's one pivot that I really want you to talk a little bit about. And you and another friend of ours, Pastor Walter Thomas Jr. made a similar pivot, but you made a renovation of your sanctuary during the COVID season. I want you to talk a little bit about that. I know you and I had conversation about it as you were doing it, but I think that's key, because even though we were in this space of being online, you were still preparing for the day that eventually we would get back in person and do online. But you made some significant changes to the building.
Absolutely. And so here's the funny thing though, Russ. It started as just, let's tweak a couple things and let's improve our online experience. So it started with, we're going to do a couple of cosmetic things, but really we're going to invest in new cameras, and just so that our online experience, because in COVID, you want to make sure that your online experience is as
Yeah.
sharp as it possibly can be. That's how it started.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm a little too cautious, and so the Lord just just pushes me into the deep end of the pool. And
Uh-huh.
so when we started the cosmetic shifts, what we found was that our roof trusses and the ceiling needed to be fully replaced.
Wow.
And so we got behind that drywall and realized that our roof was in such disrepair that we had to do a full renovation of the roof. And so that became, well, since we're redoing the roof, then let's redo the whole sanctuary. Let's not talk about it. Let's be about it, right?
Yeah.
And so that became new stage, new backlighting, new lighting system, new carpet, new ceiling, new drywall, along with the cameras, etc. And then it became, well, the sanctuary can't look fresh, and the rest of the building look old. And
Yeah.
so whole basement now is renovated, and the fellowship hall is being renovated right now. So when we finish this project, it will have been a year-long project.
Wow.
It will have been a full renovation of everything on the inside.
Wow.
And it became a reimagining of how we can utilize the space.
That's great.
So even our classrooms, we went into it saying, okay, how can we use this not only as a classroom, but as a production space?
Yeah. That's good.
And so what does that wall look like? We can't just throw paint on there. It's got to be something that will make that wall pop. So if
Yeah.
we bring a camera and lighting in here, we can record something in every square foot of our church can be used for production space. Has been the end goal of the project. And so there's been the Lord said, okay, and praise God, over 11 years we've been good stewards financially. And
Yeah.
so the shift, the pivot didn't kill us financially. We had the money to
Yeah.
be able to make these renovations, and that's important for leaders and pastors. Is if you are faithful steward over a long time, if
Yeah.
something unexpected happens,
Yeah.
like you need a whole new roof system, you hopefully you'll be in a position where you don't have to borrow money or whatever to be able to do it, because you've been faithful
Yeah.
over some time.
That's great. That's great. And I'm going to, you all know, thank you again for watching, for listening, for subscribing, Ministry Pivot. But you know that this is all done in post. So as he was saying that, you saw some pictures, because Pastor Bobby is going to send me some pictures. But I think that was a key piece. And I forgot that you did share that with me, that you were starting out with one project, but as you opened up, you saw it was more. So that is extremely wild, but super awesome that you all had the financial wherewithal and the financial opportunity as you were saving over the years to be able to be in place to do that. One of the things that I want to say before we get ready to wrap, one of the things that I want to transition into is as you talked about generational ministry. I know you have a book coming out. I want you to share a little bit about the book, but I want you to share a little bit about staffing. We talk specifically, you and I, longtime youth ministry people, and there's a different understanding. No shade against anybody who's younger than us now, currently, who's looking to be a youth pastor or be a youth minister, but the field is different now. And you experience that one-on-one, and so I want to kind of have you share some of that with us.
Yeah. So of course, we hired a youth minister, and we hired him part-time. We eventually brought him on full-time. Great young man, hungry to learn, hungry to be effective in ministry, love kids, and I think his time with us bore that out. But one thing that we learned, because it's really not about him as much as it's about the lessons that we learn and being effective in leadership. But one thing we learned is and I put this in my book, Gentegration, connecting leaders across generations, is when you have Gen Z on your staff. You gotta remember that, and we're millennials, Russ. Well, we're kind of on that zennial, older millennials, and so we got some of this as well, but not to the degree that Gen Z does. That, remember, Gen Z has many irons in the fire.
Yeah.
Coming out of seminary, my dream was to do full-time ministry. I want to get a job to be able to do ministry full time. That
Yeah.
would be
That
my
was the
dream.
prayer. That was the prayer.
That's the prayer.
Yeah.
For Gen Z, not so much. The Gen Z, for by and large, they want to do ministry full time, maybe, if not cool, because they want to do ministry. They want to be an influencer. They want to have their side hustle. They want to, and so even though you're paying them, you
Yeah.
got to understand that they have bigger goals, bigger dreams, and this isn't the only thing they're doing.
Yeah.
And so just understanding the transition of the labor force,
Yeah.
and this is happening in every industry, not just in ministry. It's happening in every industry. And so baby boomer managers and leaders are saying nobody wants to work, which isn't necessarily true. It's just
Mhm.
that nobody wants to give their whole life
Yeah.
to your dream when they have their own dreams. Really very few millennials, let alone Gen Zers, want to give their whole life to your dream. They
Yeah.
want to leverage the work they do for your dream to help them to reach their dreams. And
Yeah.
we have to be okay with that. We have to understand that, and we have to be willing to shift our business model to accommodate that if we want the benefits of having younger persons on our staff, which are vast. Let's
Yeah.
not overlook this.
Yeah.
There are vast benefits to
Yeah.
having millennials, younger millennials, as well as Gen Zers on the staff.
Yeah.
And we can't be so frustrated that they don't want the job the way that we wanted the job, or that they don't work the job the
Yeah.
way that we work the job, cause us to dismiss a whole generation that brings so much value to our staffs. Is if you don't have these young people on your team, who's running your social media?
Yeah.
Who's telling you what to post and what not to post?
Yeah.
Who's telling you what language you can use and what language you can't use? Because in the street, what you just said don't mean what you think it just said.
That's
my
good.
youth my youth director, and more times than I can count, said, "Pastor, don't say that no more." Like,
Yeah.
why can't I say that? It's like,
Yeah.
no, you because on the street that word means something different than you
Yeah.
think it means.
Yeah.
And so there's so much value in younger generations and having them at the table and
Yeah.
making sure that they're able to contribute to vision and to implementation.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to take with it what comes with it, understanding that that younger millennials and Gen Z are doing several things,
Yeah.
and you're not going to hold money over them like you could Gen X and baby boomers who came from a corporate culture.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can't say, well, I pay you, so do this. Because younger millennials and Gen Zers be like, well, keep your money because you don't,
Exactly. I'm gonna risk it
I'm
all.
not your slave. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good, man. I think that's key, and I can't wait for your book to come out, man. You said later on this summer. You
Yeah.
think,
Midsummer release. Yeah.
and so I'm super excited about that because I do think that there is a pivot, right? I think there is a shift, and I think coming, hopefully, as we come out of COVID, we come out safely. But life will never be done with COVID. I think we'll always have some remnants of it, but as we do that, one of the key pieces is how do people like you and I and pastors and leaders who are older than we are be able to understand how we can gain, as you said, the benefit of the younger generation. And so that key example that you share with me as you were hiring, and we're hiring here, shout out to my pastor, Pastor Matthew Watley at Kingdom. We're hiring for several positions. And one of the things that we shared about and talked about and cared about is that we know we're not going to find us 10 years ago now, but we're looking for a different breed of person to come in and be able to serve with us, who's teachable, who's learnable, who's excited about ministry, but we know has other things. My pastor has other things. I have a ministry pivot is another thing.
Right.
God, opportunity to be able to do it. The books that I write are other things. Pastor Bobby has books that he writes, and teaching and coaching and sessions and all of that, and the pastor of the Heights. And so I think we have to figure out how we pivot our mindset on what the next staff person, the next staff leaders can be, because eventually we can no longer be in this seat. Eventually we can no longer be where we are. And so we're going to have to figure out what that pivot looks like. Pastor Bobby, I appreciate your time on today, man. I do want to ask you one last question. I think I did it before. you've been on a couple pivots, and so I appreciate you saying yes and coming back. But are there any resources, any books, any things that you want to share with people to kind of help them as they navigate this next level of pivot? And then, of course, anything else that I might have missed from this conversation. I think you all are doing a great job at the Heights. Your apparel, you all see his shirt. It's not the shirt that he has on. That's the professional shirt. They got apparel. To the Heights. Super excited for them. But go ahead. Any last minute thoughts as well as resources?
Sure. Well, you mentioned apparel. I'll just say this real quickly, and you know this as well, Russ, because y'all do a great job of this also at Kingdom, where a big part of a brand shift is getting folks excited about the brand. And one thing that gets them excited about the brand is apparel. If you got a shirt that looks dope, if you got a sweatsuit, I'll preach in a Heights sweatsuit in a minute, and then everybody be like, well, how can I get that sweatsuit? People enjoy wearing the brand, and that's something that I think is important. If you're making a pivot like that, one way to help people embrace it is literally, one of my legacy members said, "It's cool, just get me a sweatshirt, Pastor." I was like, I got you with a sweatshirt.
That's cool.
As far as resources is concerned, my book, Gentegration, Connecting Leaders Across Generations, is a midsummer release. Stay connected to drbmanning.com and all of my social media at Dr. B. Manning to stay on top of that. I think that'll be hopefully helpful. A lot of resources that have helped me as far as pivots are concerned. Resources by Dr. Sam Chand. I can't speak about Dr. Chand enough. Who Moved My Ladder, Leadership Pain. Those types of books have helped me, because, like I said, I've been pivoting for 11 years. I had a church planting mindset, and the Lord said, "Okay, I'm sending you to this church, but I want you to bring your church planting mindset to this church." And so if you're that type of leader, that's a progressive thinker, and the Lord sends you to a place to transition, that's a great place. My pastor, shout out to my pastor, Pastor John Jenkins, he said to the church planting Bobby, who got called to this church and was thinking twice about it, he said, "Bobby, this church has two things that every church planter prays for: a building and people." and so take your progressive church planting mindset to this church and lead them through shift and change and transition. I got a whole chapter in my book on organizational change and how you do that with all the generations connected. And I think that's super important to just understand that leadership is leading people through change, and you got to do it in a manner that is slow enough for the people who need to grab it, but progressive enough that you don't allow those people to stop you from moving.
That's great. That's great, man. Pastor Bobby, I again super appreciate you being on tonight, whenever people are watching or listening. Don't forget that you can subscribe to Ministry Pivot. We'll have all the information from Pastor Bobby on there. You'll actually see it on screen as well. We'll actually have other things on our website, ministrypivot.com, from other conversations with great leaders, as well as articles. Shout out to Givelify, one of our partners, and articles that we release together. So you can find those there. And remember, this is your season of opportunity. I'm super excited to hear more and see more about what you all are doing as you pivot toward it. Reverend Russ, Ministry Pivot, talk with you soon. God bless. Okay, I hope you were as encouraged, as informed as I was about that conversation with Pastor Bobby Manning. Again, thanks, Pastor Bobby, for being on Ministry Pivot. Super excited about all that you heard. Don't forget to download the show notes. Don't forget to look at those links and those resources that are there. There are previous pivots. We talked in that episode. You heard us talk about Sabbath and sabbatical, and talk about what it means to have those. And so that pivot is listed there. We also spoke about what it means to make sure that we are looking at the power of moments and looking at momentum. And so those pivots are also listed. Don't forget to go to ministrypivot.com for more resources. Again, don't forget to go and search out Pastor Bobby Manning. His information is inside the show notes as well. And don't forget that this is your season of opportunity. Super excited about my next guest coming up. Can't wait for you to hear more about our conversation and even the ones that we have going forward. Looking forward to seeing you, looking forward to hearing from you, but more importantly, looking forward to seeing how God moves through you in this, your season of opportunity, as you pivot toward Christ. God bless.